The day we mourned a broken robot. The imperial archivist of the Orion Spur, a multi-eyed cephalopodic scholar named Xyler, adjusted his optical lenses and highlighted a blinking entry in the interstellar databanks. The classification label glowed a sharp, cautionary amber, restricted, Category 4, emotionally compromised. Across the polished obsidian table, Ambassador Vale, a stern, avian diplomat representing the United Systems Directorate, sighed, tucking his primary wings tightly against his back. "Is this the human dossier again?" Vale asked, his beak clicking in weary resignation. "The High Council has reviewed the sector reports thrice already, Archivist. We are well aware of their erratic baseline behavior." "With respect, Ambassador, I do not believe you understand the depth of the pathology," Xyler replied, tapping his primary terminal. A holographic projection materialized between them, displaying a deep space blue and rust terrestrial globe labeled Sol 3, Earth. "According to our long-range surveillance logs from Standard Cycle 2019, Xyler continued, his tentacles twitching with disbelief, the human species underwent a planetary-scale sociological crisis. Millions of citizens across multiple continents openly displayed clinical symptoms of grief, drafted formal memorial poetry, and broadcasted digital eulogies across their subspace networks." Vale frowned, leaning forward. A planetary crisis? Was there a systemic orbital bombardment? A rogue contagion? Did an asteroid breach their outer defense perimeter? "No," Xyler said flatly. "A major geopolitical conflict, then? The collapse of a continental superpower?" "Negative," Xyler replied, bringing up a magnified image of a small, six-wheeled mechanical box covered in solar panels and dust. They were mourning a machine. Specifically, a solar-powered automated geologist that had ceased operational capacity on a neighboring rock. Silence descended upon the chamber. Vale stared at the projection of the little box, his feathers fluffing in utter bewilderment. A maintenance drone?" Vale asked, his voice dropping an octave. "A piece of industrial hardware with zero sentient neural nets, no emotional matrix, and no biological imperatives beyond gathering soil samples." "Correct," Xyler confirmed, pulling up a series of recovered text logs from human social networks. "My battery is low and it is getting dark," the archivist read aloud, translating the human script into the standard Galactic dialect. That was the final telemetry packet transmitted by the device before its photovoltaic cells choked on a regional atmospheric dust storm. And the human population, they lost their collective minds. Xyler gestured to a wave of cascading holographic data files. "We intercepted billions of individual data packets. Entire orbital colonies paused commercial production. Artists composed symphonies in minor keys. Children left offerings of manufactured metallic replicas at public science institutions. They treated the cessation of a titanium and copper thermal probe with the exact psychological weight usually reserved for the passing of a sovereign matriarch." Vale rubbed his temples with two clawed fingers, a gesture he had picked up from observing human diplomats during treaty negotiations. "I remember the initial briefing," Vale muttered. "When our xenopsychologists first evaluated humanity, they flagged their pack bonding algorithm as a severe evolutionary defect. They attach sentimental value to inanimate objects. They name their atmospheric transport craft. They carve faces into the prows of their exploration vessels. It goes far beyond mere sentimentality, Ambassador," Xyler warned, bringing up a comparative chart of Galactic's psychological profiles. "Look at the Kalari hegemony. When a warship is decommissioned, they melt it down for scrap metal with clinical efficiency. When the Vorn Confederacy loses a mineral harvester, they simply calculate the replacement cost." Xyler paused, his optical lenses zooming in on the small, dusty rover stranded in the Martian red dirt. "Humans do not calculate replacement costs," the archivist whispered. "When you threaten, damage or disrespect an object they have adopted into their collective narrative, even a glorified automated toaster with wheels. They do not respond with rational economic trade-offs. They respond with an existential fury that bypasses standard logic trees. Vale looked up from the glowing projection, remembering the terrifying data from the Pretoria Prime incident years ago, where a human shipping container had been impounded and an entire Imperial shipyard had been turned into a kinetic debris field in 40 minutes. "Ah," Vale said softly, the pieces finally clicking together. "So when the Council's Psychological Advisory Board flagged human space as emotionally compromised, it was not a warning about their vulnerability," Zyler interrupted quietly. "It was a warning about ours. They are a species that will weep openly for a broken robot on a Tuesday and then weaponize the physics of the cosmos on a Wednesday if you make them angry enough about it." Zyler closed the datapad, the amber warning light fading back into the deep, dark map of the Orion Spur. "Keep the dossier restricted, Ambassador," the archivist concluded. "And whatever you do, never ever touch a human's favorite coffee mug." The obsidian doors of the Interstellar Archives hissed open, admitting a junior archivist clutching a trembling diagnostic slate. The young avian's feathers were ruffled in a state of visible agitation, his primary eyes darting nervously toward the glowing holographic projection of Mars. "Archivist Zyler, Ambassador Vale," the assistant blurted out, bowing hurriedly before regaining his posture. "A priority telemetry burst just cleared the outer relay network from the Sol sector. You need to see this." Zyler extended a tentacle, snatching the datapad from the junior's claws. "What is it, Kren? Another planetary memorial? Did they declare a national holiday for a defunct orbital weather satellite?" "Worse," Kren swallowed hard, his beak clicking nervously. "Much worse. The anomaly isn't on Earth. It's in deep space trailing a human colony transport, and it involves a civilian mining freighter." Ambassador Vale leaned over the console, his sharp eyes scanning the incoming sensor feed. "Explain. What have they done this time?" Kren tapped a command on the master console, pulling up a live visual feed captured by a passing Krell patrol corvette. On the main screen, a battered, rust-streaked human industrial cargo hauler, the SS Wanderlust, drifted dead in the void of an unassigned sector. Clamped onto its ventral plating was a massive, predatory dreadnought belonging to the independent scavenger cartels. A heavily armed marauder vessel that had been terrorizing outer rim shipping lanes for decades. "The scavenger syndicate intercepted the transport 3 cycles ago," Kren explained rapidly. "They demanded a standard plunder toll, but during the boarding action, one of the pirate mercenaries casually smashed an item sitting on the captain's console. A small, non-functional, pre-spaceflight mechanical apparatus. A vintage clockwork automaton shaped like a domestic feline." Vale stared at the screen, a slow, mounting dread pooling in his stomach. "Let me guess, it had no functional utility." "None whatsoever," Kren confirmed, sweating visibly. "It didn't navigate, it didn't compute, and its gears had been rusted solid for 2 centuries. But according to the recovered audio logs, the human captain had inherited it from his grandfather. It was his favorite desk ornament." Zyler slowly put his head in his tentacles. "By the ancestors, what did the humans do?" The junior archivist pointed a trembling wing at the tactical holomap. "They didn't call the sector patrol. They didn't negotiate a ransom. The human captain simply whispered into his ship-wide intercom. They broke the cat." The screen shifted to a wide-angle tactical playback of the preceding 48 hours. The moment that single sentence had echoed across the human-civilian frequency, the local subspace network didn't light up with diplomatic protests. It lit up with coordinate pings. Within minutes, every independent human freighter, mining rig, and light courier within a 3-light-year radius dropped their cargo, locked their inertial dampeners, and burned hard toward the pirate vessel. They didn't have heavy plasma batteries or tactical shielding. They had mining lasers, reinforced cargo rams, and an ungodly amount of industrial explosives. They swarmed the scavenger dreadnought like angry hornets. Miners in pressurized welding suits cut through the pirate ship's primary airlocks with plasma torches while shouting obscenities over open comm channels. Courier pilots rammed their own lightweight vessels directly into the Marauders' missile tubes, treating multi-million credit hulls like disposable projectiles. It wasn't a military engagement. It was an unmitigated, feral beatdown executed by a mob of enraged space truckers. By the time the Krell Patrol corvette arrived to investigate the distress beacon, the scavenger dreadnought had been stripped down to a burning, hollowed-out skeleton of twisted slag. The pirates were zip-tied in the cargo hold, staring blankly into space in a state of profound psychological shock. And in the center of the human captain's bridge, the broken brass cat sat with a crude, freshly applied strip of duct tape holding its shattered head back onto its torso. Ambassador Vale stared at the frozen image of the taped-up mechanical toy, then slowly looked up at Xyler. "They dismantled a syndicate warlord," Vale whispered, his voice dangerously close to a laugh born of sheer hysteria, "because someone broke a non-functional clockwork cat." "They did," Xyler replied solemnly, pulling the restriction label on the human dossier down to Category 5, extremely hazard adjacent. The archivist let out a long, shuddering sigh, picking up his stylus and adding a handwritten postscript to the file for the High Council's eyes only. "Note to all Galactic personnel. If you encounter a human, do not touch their broken machines, do not mock their rusted keepsakes, and for the love of the core worlds, step away from the cat." The high-frequency chime of the Council's emergency advisory comms pierced the dim quiet of the archives. Xyler reached out with a tentative tentacle and tapped the receiver. The encrypted channel flickered to life, projecting the pulsing crest of Supreme Arbiter Krell right above the obsidian table. The senior official's feathered crest was standing at rigid, terrified attention, and his multifaceted eyes were wide with panic. "Archivist? Ambassador!" Krell's voice crackled through the speaker, breathless and stripped of all bureaucratic polish. "Tell me you are monitoring the deep space tachyon relays along the outer rim sector." Xyler exchanged a grim look with Vale before answering. "We were just reviewing the incident involving the cargo vessel SS Wanderlust and the scavenger dreadnought Arbiter. We have updated their threat index to Category 5. "Forget the scavenger dreadnought?" Krell snapped, his wings fluttering frantically in a rare display of undignified terror. "That was a localized bar fight compared to what is happening right now. The human subspace network has just broadcasted a system-wide telemetry update." Vale leaned forward, resting his talons on the edge of the console. "What kind of update? Another memorial?" "Worse," Krell groaned, projecting a secondary holographic window directly above the map of the Orion Spur. "It's a repair ledger. The human captain of the Wanderlust posted an open-source schematic of the broken clockwork cat on their public interstellar database. He tagged it with a simple open-source bounty request. Needs microgears and a sympathetic jeweler, willing to trade heavy isotope fuel cells." Xyler blinked. "A trade request? Why is the High Directorate in a panic over a trade request?" "Because," Krell shouted, his voice cracking, within 12 minutes of that post going live, 3 independent human megacorporations, 2 private terraforming syndicates, and an entire autonomous colony of AI-driven asteroid miners stopped their primary industrial output. The holographic map suddenly erupted with hundreds of blinking, high-velocity vector lines streaking across the star chart like a swarm of angry red comets. "They stopped working?" Vale asked, bewildered. "To fix a toy." "They didn't just stop working, Ambassador," Krell said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "They weaponized their logistics network. One of the megacorporations, some orbital manufacturing collective called Titan Foundry, misinterpreted a comment on the thread as an insult to the cat's craftsmanship. Do you know what they did?" "What?" Zyler asked, a cold shudder running through his tentacles. "They diverted a multi-billion credit commercial fleet of heavy industrial cruisers, ships designed to crack dwarf planets, and parked them directly over the private luxury resort world belonging to the CEO of the company that manufactured the pirate syndicate's weapons." Vale's feathers puffed up. "They started a planetary blockade over a toy cat." "They didn't blockade it," Krell corrected grimly. "They didn't fire a single missile. They simply dropped anchor in high orbit, deployed heavy sonic dampeners, and spent 48 hours blasting a loop of a pre-spaceflight acoustic ballad called What's New, Pussycat, down onto the capital city at maximum volume, until the corporate board surrendered unconditionally and offered to handcraft a solid platinum replacement mechanism for the feline." Silence descended upon the archive room. The flickering red vectors on the galactic map continued to multiply, a chaotic web of illogical, hyper-aggressive, deeply sentimental chaos spreading outward from Earth across the entire Orion spur. Archivist Zyler slowly closed the human dossier, picked up his stylus, and crossed out Category 5. With a firm, trembling stroke, he wrote a new designation at the top of the page. Status: uncontainable. Vale stared blankly at the map, taking a slow, calming breath. "Well," the ambassador muttered, sliding his chair back from the table, "I suppose I have only one question left." "What is that?" Zyler asked quietly. "You happen to know where one might purchase a clockwork cat? Because if the humans are handing out heavy isotope fuel cells for spare parts, I am thinking it is time to diversify our economy." The heavy obsidian doors of the archive didn't just slide open this time. They rattled in their tracks as a frantic junior archivist burst into the room, clutching a smoking diagnostic pad that smelled faintly of scorched ozone. "Excellencies," Kren gasped, leaning against the obsidian table for support, his chest heaving. "The situation in the Orion spur has deteriorated past the point of metric calculation. The human networks have gone entirely asynchronous." Ambassador Vale didn't even look up from his newly drafted list of mechanical toy importers. "Let me guess. Did another megacorporation start blasting pre-spaceflight acoustic ballads at a planetary capital?" "No, Ambassador," Kren squeaked, tapping the smoldering datapad. "They escalated. The video of the platinum replacement cat being hand-delivered to the SS Wanderlust went viral across their subspace grid. And a rival human faction felt the gesture was culturally inadequate." Archivist Zyler paused, his tentacles freezing mid-curl. "Inadequate? It was a solid platinum feline mechanism crafted by master artisans. How could anyone find that inadequate?" "Because," Kren swallowed hard, bringing up a live sensor feed from the outer perimeter of human space, "the rival faction is a collective of deep space asteroid miners known as the Rust Belt Directorate. And they decided that a mere platinum cat wasn't enough to heal the emotional trauma of the original incident." On the main holoscreen, the view shifted to a remote sector near the edge of human territory. There, suspended in the silent void, sat an entire planetary-scale moon that had been completely hollowed out, fitted with massive sublight thrusters, and converted into a fully operational mobile orbital memorial. "Is that," Vale squinted, his beak dropping open, "is that a moon?" "It was a moon," Kren corrected hysterically. "Now it's a mobile, heavily armed tribute installation, shaped entirely like a giant, glittering, multi-ton mechanical scratching post, complete with automated laser pointer defense turrets and a holographic display of the fixed cat looping across the lunar surface on a scale visible from 3 star systems away." Silence blanketed the archive room, heavier and more suffocating than before. Zyler stared at the colossal, floating cat monument, then slowly looked down at his multi-layered hazard classification files. He didn't even bother picking up his stylus. Instead, he simply reached out, picked up the entire folder labeled Humanity, and slid it directly into the incinerator chute. "What are you doing?" Vale asked, his voice deadpan. Discarding it, Xyler replied calmly, leaning back in his chair and rubbing his temples. You cannot classify a species that responds to a broken desk toy by turning celestial bodies into interactive monuments of spite and affection. We are no longer dealing with a civilization, Ambassador. Vale let out a long, shuddering sigh, finally putting down his list of toy importers. Then what, precisely, are we dealing with? The archivist stared out the observation window, watching the distant, blinking lights of human trade vessels cruising peacefully past the nebula. Entirely unaware of the geological and psychological shockwaves they had just sent rippling through the galaxy. We are dealing with a species that treats the universe like a living room, Xyler whispered, and heaven help anyone who tracks mud across the rug.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest uploads.